I trust that none of you were followed. Thank you for joining us to this very secret spot that is behind the abandoned Sherry's, next to the abandoned Circuit City and the abandoned Blockbuster Video. Before we proceed any further, with opening your third eye and welcoming you into the world of secret knowledge, I want you all to raise your right hand and say, I solemnly swear.
I solemnly swear.
Insert your name here.
Insert your name here.
Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Insert your name here. When I say that, you say your name. So insert your name here. Jim Armstrong. That I was not followed.
That I was not followed.
That I am not a member of the New World Order.
That I am not a member of the New World Order.
Or the Bayhive.
Or the Bayhive.
You don't know who that is. She rules everything. Beyonce.
Take away.
Now, before I embark on our journey of secret knowledge, can I have a minor annoyance, something that you would consider a minor annoyance in the world? Minor annoyance.
People not looking where they're going when they're on their phone.
People not looking where they're going when they're on their phone.
Yes.
And can I have someone who is absolutely unrelated in his story or in present to people not looking, not walking while they're looking? You know what I mean. A person.
Betsy Ross.
Betsy Ross. So Betsy Ross, people looking at their phones and not looking where they're walking. And can I have a 6-letter word?
Picnic.
Picnic. Picnic. Betsy Ross. People not looking where they're going when they're walking and looking at their phones. You may think that these three disparate things are not related. You would be wrong. Allow me to open your third eye to the dangers that have been brought forth by Miss Betsy Ross. Let me take you back to colonial times in these United States of America, as they would allow you to believe. There's little Betsy Ross, the maker of the American flag, or so they would tell you. Very patiently sewing the blue in the upper left-hand corner, the red and the white stripes, and 13 stars. But why was she doing that? A lot of people think that was for George Washington, that he personally came by after apologizing for chopping down a cherry tree and said, Betsy, I need a flag. But that's not what really happened. What really happened was something a little more like this. Hey, I'm Betsy Ross. I'm going to make this quilt. It's just a quilt. No one's going to see. And the cupboard behind her opens. And someone's looking out. Someone with horns. The devil. Hey, Betsy. Ah! What are you doing in my cupboard? What is anybody doing in my cupboard? I'm the devil. It's a nice quilt you're making. Can you make something for me? No, you're the devil! Fine. I'll take your soul if you don't make something for me. Make something very distracting. And so, by letting Old Scratch use her hands to create a beautiful quilt, she took all of the scraps that were in the basket next to her. There were things that were quite wicked for the colonial times. There were patterns that were little X's, patterns that were polka dots, just crazy stripe patterns in unusual colors like pink and yellow. Who does that on a quilt? And so she created the most enormous quilt that anyone had ever seen. It was 100 feet by 100 feet. And old Scratch was very pleased that she had created this entire beautiful quilt. What? I have this enormous quilt. What am I going to do with this? I want you to display it in Boston Commons so that everybody can see it. And so she traveled to Boston and put it up in Boston Commons, stretched one way, stretched the other. A giant 100-foot by 100-foot quilt that was so oppressively ugly that no one could ignore it. People would just be going about their normal business, selling tobacco and molasses and other things like that, and they would be caught in the glare of that quilt. The colors shining off, the strange patterns contrasting with each other and opposing each other, and they couldn't see it. And then they'd walk into other people, and they'd walk into other people in carts and other stores that they hadn't even mean to go into. What am I doing in a stamp shop? I don't know. And so Boston became chaos. You may recognize it today as also a chaotic city. And that quilt, that horrifying quilt, almost undid all the good that Betsy Ross did by creating the American flag. But you may wonder, where has that quilt gone? For one day, the day they call Patriots Day, or the one, as in the commemoration of the Battle of Concord and Lexington in the middle of April, it vanished. One day it was there, and the next day it was gone. They thought they put it in the basement of the Old North Church, but no one could see it. An archivist, during the Civil War, went down to the basement, and he looked very carefully among the archives for something that would inspire the Union to defeat the Confederacy and keep the country whole. But he could not. He could not find where that quilt had gone. Quilt. We'll refer to this more in the future. But let us leave the Civil War and go to the present time, where everyone has these glowing boxes of light and mathematics that are in your pocket. I don't have one, of course, because they could be reviewed by the NSA, infiltrated. I insist on carrier pigeons. Carrier pigeons are unbreakable, unless you have birdseed. But carrier pigeons were also important once upon a time, during the Civil War. Bet you didn't think about that. General Grant, when he was going through his very impressive Western campaign, was not helped only by carrier pigeons, but, and the history books won't tell you about this, nor will Mr. Ken Burns, who was one of them. Mr. Ken Burns. Ken Burns is a lizard person. Lizard. Quilt lizard. It'll make sense when I bring it all together. Ken Burns is a lizard. They found him in Little Rock, Arkansas. A antecedent of his, an ancestor, if you will. Talked to General Grant in 1862. When I say talk, they didn't actually talk. The lizard did something a little more like this. But you could tell by his eyes. the eyes, the spirit of the lizard bored into Grant's brain and told him, "You must keep going," or in lizard. And so Grant put that lizard upon his shoulder. Where the eagle used to be, there is a lizard now. And if you go to Grant's tomb in New York City, there is a tiny lizard that is right on top of the tomb. No one ever explained it until now. Facts, sheeple. These are facts. That lizard saved the Union. That lizard whose name was Chester. Chester the lizard. Chester. 2 R's. Not a lot of people know that. Chester the lizard. Chester, who had another child, or a lizard child, or as they would call it, embryo, offspring, some sort of little weird wiggly thing. I'd just call it child. Child, and then child, and then child, and then 1,500 generations later, Ken Burns came upon the world and told us stories about jazz and the Civil War and baseball, mostly told through voiceover. Why wouldn't he want people to see him? Exactly. Ken Burns doesn't want you to see him. Doesn't want you to know what he looks like. Have you seen Ken Burns? No. Does anybody know what Ken Burns looks like? No. You see pictures of him on PBS, but that's not him. You have, in every single one of his documentaries, you have these letters that are being read by someone like Morgan Freeman. Dearest Virginia, I have been oh so endangered by this war. Why, I cannot even play baseball with my friends or play our instruments of jazz. For these are the 3 subjects that I am most proficient in. Baseball, the Civil War, jazz. Lizard, lizard, lizard. The saxophone. What is the shape of a saxophone? It's like an S, but that's not a normal instrument. You have a piano. A piano is pretty much a rectangle. You have a drum. Drum's a circle. What's an S? S. Snake. Snake. Reptile. Reptile. Lizard. Saxophone. Sax-o-phone. Sax-o-phone. I think they walk among us. Be quiet, they'll go away. Saxophone, which is a reed instrument, which is unusual. Usually you hit an instrument or you blow into a cup, like a trumpet. Trumpet's a normal instrument, not like a saxophone. With its curve, with its big bell. And that big bell, what does that bring us back to? Philadelphia Liberty Bell, the cracked bell? Betsy Ross, thank you. Betsy Ross, distraction. Distraction, jazz. Jazz was the smartphone of the 1920s. A lot of people don't know this. But jazz was very distracting. You would have these jazz clubs on the 2nd floor of many major metropolitan towns in the United States of America, and you would have this incredible music coming over it, and then you'd have these saxophones with their wonderful music that was unlike anything anybody had ever heard before. And it was prohibition at that time. So a lot of folks couldn't drink. A lot of folks who were legal, who wanted to stay legal, could not drink. So they got high on jazz. With the bells, with the music, with the irregular notation patterns. You could be walking down the street in a normal, let's say a normal place, anywhere in the USA, let's say Seattle, just because we're here. And you could listen to the jazz coming off of the second floor. And you just be walking down the street and you start dancing. And you have this uncontrollable urge, but you fight it. You fight it because you're a red-blooded American, and you fight that urge to dance, and you can't. And then all of a sudden you start running into people, and then you end up in a tobacco shop, and you end up in a stamp shop, like those things still exist in the 1920s. And then you end up with all of these sheets of stamps. $1,500 worth, which is a lot in the 1920s, worth of stamps that you don't know. You don't know that many people to send letters to. But what's on those stamps? The American flag, which was sewn by Betsy Ross. Connection. American flag, stamp, sewn by Betsy Ross. Stamp. 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 The United States Postal Service. Protected in the Constitution, by the way, Postmaster General. Why is the Postmaster General one of the few things that's protected in the Constitution? Why do you think that is? Why do you think the stamps say forever on them now? Why do you think that is?
Lizards?
You've been paying attention. The lizards, who have the dry skin, who have come back since the dinosaurs, who have lasted practically forever. They own the United States Postal Service. Every time you send a letter, every time that you send that lovely Christmas card to your grandma, and maybe she sends a birthday card back with a $15 check because money doesn't go as far as it used to, but that's what she thinks is appropriate. She sends it with one of those forever stamps on it, and forever the U.S. Postal Service will have you under its control. That's why I don't have an address. Carrier pigeons. Carrier pigeons are nature's email. They'll never turn on you. Thaddeus, my carrier pigeon, has been with me for 4 years, 6 months, and 7 days. I hatched him myself. I sat on that egg. I sat on that egg, kept it warm with my bum. I'm not afraid to call it that. A lot of people are, I'm not. I kept him warm. I kept him warm and safe. But you know, carrier pigeons are also a threat. They're a threat to the people that make cell phones. You know that? Why do you think it's called Twitter? Why do you think Twitter has the bird on it? The bird which is trying to replace your cell phone. And that Twitter and that cell phone become, boom, distractions. Distractions of Twitter and cell phones so that you, red-blooded American citizen, are just walking down the street. Hey, I'd like to be over there on the other side of the street. And you're walking and you're not paying attention, and it's either walk or don't walk. It's one or the other. You gotta choose. You walk across the street in front of cars, in front of buses, in front of people on bicycles who don't give a damn about the traffic lights.
True.
They're part of it. And they'll hit you because you're distracted. But you know what is almost everywhere in America besides the Starbucks? Post offices. So you get injured. But you can't make it to the ambulance because you don't trust those ambulance drivers. They lift you up. They take you into a post office. You're recovering in that post office. And you see the forever stamps The sticky forever stamps with the 13-star American flag on it, and you think, I'm waiting here. They'll never go out. They'll never raise in price. I'm gonna buy some stamps, and that's what they want you to do. The stamps and the cell phone companies. And you may wonder, well, how do the cell phone companies work into here, Bill? How do this? Shh, that was my real name. I'm sorry. You mean Jiff. How do the cell phone companies work into this? The cell phone companies, they have this thing called G3, which has become G4, which has become LTE. LTE. Little, tiny espionage. Espionage, like a spy, that gets into your phone, that gets into your mail. Little, tiny espionage, like a spy, like the CIA. PICNIC. This picnic's got nothing but bugs, man. And now you know. But you were never here.